On the very month that the Second World War broke out, September 1939, a young master arrived in St. Columba's College from Mountjoy School where he had been teaching. It's incredible to think that this is 55 years ago and a still very youthful Harry Lush will be talking to me about his life and his experiences at St. Columba's. Harry Lush, would you tell us something about your life briefly before you came to St. Columba's?
Well, if I start right at the beginning, our family, we were all born in County Sligo, father, mother, and 5 sons. And my father had a flax mill in the late from 1916 to 1920, 21, and the flax that was grown around the district, which he scutched in his mill, it was sent to Belfast. But then when the Saoirse Éireann was formed in the early 1920s, Belfast put an extra tariff, an extra tax on flax, so that it wasn't worthwhile flax being sent to Belfast. You'd be losing money. So that was our source of income, our source of revenue, and our life was fast disappearing. So we had to do something. So my mother saw, and she had been a teacher, a primary school teacher, and she had seen an ad in the Irish Times for a primary teacher wanted in Lord Fitzwilliam's estate, Shillelagh, County Wicklow. So she applied, and she got the job, and we all arrived in County Wicklow, across Ireland, in 1925-26. And shortly afterwards, I was sent as a boarder to Newtown School, Waterford, in 1926, when I was 9 years old, and when there were 26 pupils in Newtown School, Waterford, under a famous headmaster, Arnold Marsh. By 1932, through Arnold Marsh's work and endeavours on behalf of the college had risen to over 120. When I was at Newtown, as I say, I went there at 9 years of age, and at about 16 or so, my mother said that the fees were too much. She had 4 other children to be educated, and she would like to send them to Newtown. The fees were too much, so she wrote to Arnold Marsh and said that she was taking Harry, the eldest, out of Newtown and sending him to Kilkenny College. Well, Arnold Marsh, clever man that he was, knew that there were 4 other Lushes behind him, so he said, well, he came to me one day and he tapped me on the shoulder and said, I had a letter from your mother that she couldn't afford the fees, but so I tell you what we'll do, we'll take you in Newtown for nothing, you'll have no fees to pay. So all the other 4 followed in Newtown. I took up Irish then, and
I was going to ask you, did you do Irish at Newtown?
Oh yes, I did indeed. I did an Irish Silership from Newtown, and the teacher there was a man called Seamus Malone. He was teaching in a Quaker school, and he was a member of the IRA. It was a funny combination, the IRA and Newtown, but he was a very jolly man, a very fair man, and a very witty, clever, and a great Irish speaker. And he taught me a lot of Irish, along with a man called Liam Glynn.
What was the attitude of the people at Newtown and at Trinity College, and if I could generalise in the Protestant community generally, to the Irish language? And would you have seen your love and expertise in it as somehow exceptional for that time?
Well, no. When we went to Newtown, and when we had this man Seamus Malone, he encouraged us. He had a great personality. He was a very witty man, and a good lad, and a good companion in every way. And he sort of encouraged us for Irish, and he told us stories appertaining to Irish, and he got us interested in it. And I was at the time captain of games, captain of rugby, cricket and hockey, and he said to himself, well, if I get Harry Lush interested in Irish, it'll be a great help to me to get the rest. So he did that, and we had no bother with Irish in Newtown at all. Then when I went to Trinity, I did a sizership in Trinity from Newtown, and the man sitting beside me was, on my right, was Conor Cruz O'Brien. So Conor Cruz O'Brien, we all knew that he would get the first sizer, as he did. I didn't get a sizer because I had another year to go. I was a year underage, so my mother packed me off to Mountjoy, and I got a sizer from Mountjoy. Then from Mountjoy, I was in charge of games and so on. The headmaster, Reverend William Anderson, when I did the sizership, he kept me on to teach, and then I was in charge of cricket and hockey and so on in Mountjoy.
And through that you came to know St. Columba's
and
first?
Through that then, we brought up a cricket team here to St. Columba's in 1939.
Just before you, the term before you
came?
came?
The term before.
And what were the circumstances of your moving from Mountjoy to St. Columba's?
Well, the warden here was down at the cricket match, and he had a long chat with me, a long conversation. He wasn't long here in Columbus, and he was trying to build the college up. And Warden Sowby had a long chat with me, and he sent me a telegram. I said, no, he wrote to me, asking me to join the staff in Columbus.
What do you think it was about you that made him want to have you on staff?
Well, I don't know, he and I just hit it off. We were on the same wavelength. We spoke about cricket, about the school, about the boys, about education and everything. And we just both were of the same mind and the same attitude to life.
You'd had a lot of experience at that stage of boarding school from Mountjoy, Kilkenny, Newtown. What was your attitude to the idea of a boarding school and of children being educated away from home?
Well, I thought it was a very good thing. As I said, I was sent to Newtown when I was 9 years of age. And when you're sent to a boarding school, it makes you learn how to stand on your 2 feet, your own 2 feet. It also makes you learn how to fight your corner, because there are many corners you've got to fight when you're in a boarding school. There's this person and that person tugging out of you and maybe trying to bully you when you're a young fella. And you've got to be able for all that. And you've just got, it's the process of learning going through life. So
you arrived at St. Columba's as a man not much older than the sixth form pupils.
Yes.
And it was your fourth boarding school.
Not my fourth, my third.
Your third?
Yes.
What was the impression of the school compared with the other boarding schools that you had known, and indeed the other schools you had known?
Well,
your first impressions?
Luckily for me, I was at Newtown, and there was a great, Newtown being co-educational, there was a great atmosphere in Newtown. You didn't smoke at Newtown, you didn't drink, you didn't tell smutty stories, you kept on the straight and narrow, and there was a tremendous atmosphere and a tremendous spirit. When I went to Mountjoy, it was the complete opposite. I remember going to Mountjoy, bringing a tuck box. I was told to bring a tuck box and to bring it absolutely packed with food, because there are times you might be hungry there. So we had lockers downstairs in the basement, and I had a locker and a key from a locker, and the following day I went to get out some stuff, and it was all gone. So that was my introduction to Mountjoy.
So St. Columba's was a bit more like Newtown?
Oh yes, exactly.
Except for the girls?
Except for the girls, yes, yes.
Okay, well talk about your experiences and memories of it in your first year here.
Well, in my first year, the first term I was here, I played games. I played rugby, because I played rugby in Trinity, and I was on the first hockey team, the first soccer team, and the first cricket team in Trinity. So when I came here, Dick Shackleton of Kildare, Shackleton's Mills. Dick was games master. So after a couple of weeks, I played rugby down there, and I was able to sort of kick a rugby ball, convert it from beyond the halfway, and drop a goal from beyond the halfway.
So you played with rather than coaching?
I played with the team, and well, I coached them as well. I coached them as well. So when Dick Shackleton saw all this, and maybe he had a word or two with a couple of the boys, he said that I was the man to take over the games. So I took over the games, and I was saddled with the whole lot of the games: hockey, cricket, and rugby. And I had to look after the whole lot, coach them, and so on, range matches, this, that, and the other. And then I remember the warden then asked me some time later, would I do drill at break at 11 o'clock. So I said,
What
certainly.
did that involve?
Well, calisthenics of all descriptions and size out there in front of the chapel.
In front of the chapel?
Well, in that square there, that quadrangle
Yes,
there.
the quadrangle,
Yeah, yes. And then I went to the warden and I said, Warden, you've heaped a lot of money, a lot of work, extra work on me. I've taken over games and I've taken over drill and this, that and the other. And I said, would you not be able to give me an increase on my £5 a week? So he looked at me and he said, Harry, by doing that, it'll make you a professional. And we couldn't have that.
Well, Harry, what else were you doing apart, if you had any time, apart from all of these games? You were teaching?
I was teaching Irish to the whole school.
I see.
And then I was coaching backward pupils at night. And then when that was finished, I was studying myself for a degree in Celtic languages in Trinity.
And how did you get time to do all this?
I don't know. I used to work until 1 and 2 in the morning.
So you obviously felt you were being exploited.
Well, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed life up here. It was a great life.
Were you the most junior member of staff when you came?
Yes, I suppose I would have been, yes.
And what was life like with the other? It was very much a male community, wasn't it?
It was a complete male community.
And what was life like, and what were your colleagues like, and how did they regard you as a young, active, energetic fellow?
Well, in the common room, you just kept quiet, and you didn't say.
You sat below the salt, I suppose.
You sat below the salt, exactly, and you listened to our elders speaking, Sandon Willis, George White.
Did you find that a bit of a bore? I mean, obviously these were men of great ability, but to have to sit there listening to the same people every night, talking as if you were meant to hang on their every word, do you think it wasn't very democratic, was it?
Well, these were very well educated men, very well versed, very well read men, and they always had something to say which was interesting and which was education in itself if you wish to listen. Then George Lodge would butt in now and again and add to the conversation. And then we had a man there called Peter Ault, and Peter was excellent.
He taught English?
He taught English, oh yes. He was very brilliant.
There was a saying going at the time, Willis and White are always right. Did you get that impression that there was, in a sense, by these two legendary figures, neither of whom I worked with, that they were, in a sense, very much controlling what went on in the college?
Yes, they were, especially White. White controlled a lot, very cleverly, sort of very adeptly. If he wanted his way about certain things, he went about it the right way, and eventually he got his way.
And what about, you mentioned your initial pleasant meeting with Warden Sowby.
Yeah.
He's a character that has aroused strong feelings for and against by people who worked with him. What was your working relationship with him like, and did it change over the period that you were here?
No, I had the greatest regard for Warden Sowby because he did so much for the college. When he came here for the college was on its uppers, as is said, and he had to add to it. He had to get more pupils. He had to construct here and construct there to make things easier for all those people in the college. And he accomplished a great deal. Oh, there's great credit to him that, for having done so much for so many.
And would many of the staff, or most of the staff at that time, shared your views about him?
Yes, except one or two didn't.
Yes.
One or two were always against him.
Yes.
He couldn't do anything right.
Why was that, do you think?
I couldn't tell you. Maybe one or two of them were sort of, they had higher opinions of themselves and then in life, and they never reached those heights, and they were a bit sort of dejected, and they were trying to take it out of somebody else who had been successful.
What was we've talked a bit about the common room, the atmosphere among the boys, as it was only boys then. Was it a happy place, do you think?
Oh, it was a very happy place.
Yes.
There was a great spirit in Columbus. We had a great rugby team. We beat Blackrock one time in rugby, and we had a first-class cricket team. We had a captain here, Shane Jemison, whose father, Captain Tommy Jemison, captained the MCC in India years and years ago, with whom I played cricket with Captain Tommy Jemison down the country many and many a time. And there was a great spirit, and we had a great hockey team as well. In fact, games was uppermost here in the lives of the boys.
And what about those that were not natural games players?
Well, they had other things. It was a complete democratic society. If you wanted to play games, if you wanted to come down to Marley and practice at the rugby and so on, and hockey and this, that and the other, go down to the cricket pitch there, that you could come. If you didn't want to come, it was a completely democratic institution, and you chose and you did your own thing. There was no compulsion about it.
Where did you live when you were here in the college?
Over in Stack Allen, is that what you call it now?
The Dublin building?
Yeah, that's right, yes.
Which is where Glen
Glen House, yes.
And did you have any house duties? Helping the housemaster, who would have been Dr. Willis at the time?
Oh yes, we had our duties here. We were on duty sort of week in, week out. We had to do a week's duty.
What did that involve, being on duty then?
Well, just being around the place, not going into town, being on call, as it were, then seeing the boys into breakfast and to lunch and into dinner, into the evening meal, and so on. Just being here and keeping an eye and being responsible for everything and anything that happened.
Did you go to chapel?
Oh yes, every day. Yes.
And what was
in the wartime?
Yes.
We had chapel at 1 o'clock. With an extra service then.
So you'd an early morning one and
Yes.
1 o'clock.
Yes.
Why was that? To say prayers for the people at war.
It was war. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And did it mean a lot to the people then during the war to be able to have that extra service?
Well, it did to a lot of people. Then a lot of people said that there was too much emphasis on religion, and it might have sort of cooled them off a bit towards religion. But the vast majority of the people, because the war in those early years was very, very much touch and go. I mean, we could have at any time had a raid from Hitler and the Gestapo and the Nazi forces. We could have had them here on the hills at any moment. There was always that fear. And then during that time, Dublin was bombed. I was here when Dublin was bombed and saw it.
And what about turning to your teaching, the attitude to Irish here? Did you find any resistance?
None whatsoever. None. In fact, I think the best answer I can give you that is the warden's son, David Sowby. He came from a prep school. He came from Adelphi. And he learned Irish for the first time here. And within 2 years, he passed his intermediate, as the other boys all had to do, who came, the Gwynns now, they came from, was it Baymount? They came from Baymount, and then there were other boys from Castle Park, and they came here within 2 years, had to pass the intermediate, and then go on and do leaving certificate. And David Sowby, I meet him now and again. Whenever I meet him, he quotes Irish poetry to me that he learned, I don't know, 40, 50 years ago, and he quotes it absolutely perfect. Poetry that we have long since forgotten existed.
And your other colleagues, did they have the respect for the subject that you felt it was due?
I don't remember, what do you mean by colleagues now?
Your teaching colleagues?
Oh, my teaching colleagues.
Yes.
Well, they looked after their own subject, and it was hard enough for them to look after their own subject. But they weren't that much, especially the elders of the common room, they weren't that much approving of the Irish language. They thought it naturally a bit of a waste of time. I mean, they were in the sciences, the mathematics, and in the classics. And Irish was a forgotten language, more or less, as far as they were. But the boys, I had no difficulty, and the boys got great results.
Was there any talk of politics at that time? In other words, we were a neutral country who were not officially involved in the war, under a government led by Mr. De Valera, and yet a number of the families and indeed members of staff would have been involved with the forces fighting the Germans. Was there ever any feeling that we were, in a sense, up here out of touch with national opinion in Ireland?
No, I wouldn't say we were, because as you say, we had members of the staff here from Great Britain, from Oxford and Cambridge and from other places, and they fitted in very well, and there was great discussions at that time about the policies of England and the policies of Ireland remaining neutral. Why shouldn't we be in the war? And then Winston Churchill came along and he pleaded that we should hand over the ports to him, so that the ports would be able, that the submarines would be able to go out from these ports of Ireland and patrol the Atlantic in a much easier vein than going from Southampton and Portsmouth and so on. And then De Valera came on it was wireless and the radio in those times. De Valera came on the radio and gave Churchill a very powerful answer. But nobody here in the Common Room at the time, that they were against De Valera doing that. They thought it was right, seeing that the amount that Ireland was subjugated to the last 400 years under British rule. They thought that it was right, that De Valera was entitled to take that stance, and the majority of the Irish people were behind De Valera.
Were there any aspects of college life at that time that you disliked? You speak very positively about the atmosphere.
No, there was no atmosphere. It was a very beautiful atmosphere. It was like stepping out of Newtown School, Waterford, where there was one colossal atmosphere in Newtown, between boys and girls and staff and everything else. And it was just like stepping out of Newtown and coming uphill here to Columbus. There was no difference. There was a really great atmosphere. I mean, there were characters. We were all different. I mean, Peter Ault, George White, Sandon Willis, they were all great men, George Lodge. They were great men. I mean, Sandon Willis, as a teacher, was a first-class mathematician. There are, I believe, a lot of great mathematicians that have sort of emanated from Columbus. There are great many people with on the science ethos also have emanated from Columbus, and they are down to George White, to Sandon Willis, and to George Lodge.
How long did you stay here in all, Harry?
4 years.
4 years.
Yeah, 1939 to 1943.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope you don't mind if I read to you part of the reminiscences of William Trevor on leaving school. And he was a boy here when you were on the staff.
That's right.
And this was one of his memories. I remembered then my great surprise when one tea time during my first term, a young master who happened to be under notice to quit had locked the door of the dining hall and had stood against it, calling peremptorily for silence. Then, in front of the housekeeper, aghast behind bowls of scrambled eggs, in front of the maids who carried armfuls of plates and giggled at the interruption, he gave us his version of his dismissal, denouncing the headmaster in an abusive manner. What's your memory of that occasion?
Well, no, he has parts of it right and parts of it are way out. What really happened then was the warden wrote to me when I was in Kerry that Christmas, in the Gaeltacht in Kerry, and I didn't get that letter because I had switched my house on my way down, and I came back to Columbus in 1943, the spring term of 1943, and I walked in here and I met the warden and I was in great humour, and a couple of hours later the warden called me into his study and said, "Did you get a letter from me while I was in Kerry?" And I said, "No, warden, I didn't." "Oh, well, said he, I'll write it out again for you." So he wrote it, got it, his secretary to type it out again and gave it to me, and it was my dismissal, in that he had done everything possible whilst I was at Columbus to lead me into the spirit of the college, but that every effort on his part had failed. Therefore, it was with regret that I ask you to leave at the end of this Hillary term.
What did he mean? That he had failed to...
That I can't tell you, because not only was I here at the time, but also he gave my brother Norman, who was a teacher at Newtown, he gave him a job teaching during my time at Columbus. So I couldn't. His first paragraph started off with that since I arrived at Columbus, the games have progressed beyond all recognition, as too has the Irish language and the teaching of Irish language and the success in examinations. But it is with regret that you'll have to leave at the end of the Hillary term, because every effort on my part to bring you into the spirit of the college has failed.
The same incident is referred to in Michael Campbell's book, Lord Dismiss Us, perhaps even in a more colourful way than in William Trevor's account. Is his account of your time here in Lord Dismiss Us, and indeed Michael Campbell's portrayal of the college in general in Lord Dismiss Us,
well, now,
accurate?
I have twice or three times tried to read Lord Dismiss Us, but I am so busy in life teaching at the moment, and I've got 1,001 other things to do that I haven't. But one day I will take it away on holidays and I will read it. But in Lord Dismiss Us, in this actual incident, the actual incident started why I locked the door was that there was a matron here called Molly McLaughlin, who also came from Sligo, and she and I were very great, and we were engaged. And the warden's wife, Mary Sowby, went round the college spreading the rumour that any time now the matron would produce the college with the bouncing baby.
And did you tell the school?
So that this was going round, and the boys were writing this home to their parents, and the feedback was coming to me. So I said I must put a stop to this and stop it immediately. So one Sunday, one evening, or maybe it was a Sunday, I was on duty. Oh, it was a Sunday, yes. I was on duty. So when the meal was over, the maids had gone out, all food was consumed. I went down to the end of the dining room, locked the door, put the key in my pocket, or whatever it was, and waltzed up to the dais, addressed the boys, and I told them that they can write back to their parents and tell them, parents, from me, that there is no truth in what the warden's wife, said about me and about the matron producing a bouncing baby, that this will definitely not happen. So I told them that I was sorry leaving, that I had a great rapport with the pupils here, and that I loved Columbus and so on. I didn't blame the warden, but when it was over, anyway, they gave 3 cheers, and the 3 cheers took the roof off the place almost. So the warden heard the cheering, and he collared a little boy afterwards. He said, what was the cheering in dining hall? So the little boy told him that was Harry Lush making the speech. And he found out the speech, the contents of the speech. And after chapel that night, he sent for me and he told me, get out now, immediately. Don't put your foot in this college again while I'm here. So that night I had to get out, and all the means I had to get of getting out was a bicycle. So the old headmaster of my school, Newtown School, Waterford, Arnold Marsh, the man who had done so much for Newtown, was living in Rathfarnham at the time, in Lord Gleneary's house, if you know where it is, up there in the hills. So I went up to Arnold Marsh, knocked on his door, told him what happened. Oh, see, Harry, come in. You'll stay the night with us. So I stayed the night, and I stayed a week. And then I went down to Rathmines, and I started studying seriously. I got digs in Rathmines with friends of mine, started studying seriously for my mod in Trinity and Celtic languages. And one day I was studying, and I was reading that Columbus College had played Newbridge in the Cup, and I was reading the account of it, and right underneath the account was an ad for an assistant manager wanted in a first-class cinema in Dublin, prospects excellent. So I took out pen and paper and wrote 3 pages of my CV, sent it in, no rough copy, nothing, because I was only doing this for interest. So in 2 weeks' time, I got an ad, I got a call to appear at 13 De Lear Street, where the Irish Times is now, their head office, 13 Delir Street, for an interview. So I went in for the interview, and there were 4 very opulent-looking men smoking huge cigars, beautifully dressed, well-spoken, and they talked to me for well over an hour. 2 weeks later, I got another letter to appear for a second interview. This time there were 6 men, and I was there for nearly an hour and 3/4. And they asked me all sorts of questions. 2 weeks later, I got a letter that I had got the job. The man who was manager of the Adelphi was a man called Jack Hamilton, 72, who had been at Mountjoy School, Dublin.
So you moved very quickly then from one job to the other.
One very quickly.
But did you obey Warden Sowby's injunction not to set foot in the college for what would have been another 4 or 5 years?
No, while he was here, I didn't.
Yes.
No, I did not.
What were your feelings afterwards? I mean, you had moved on to another job, you were finishing in Trinity, but were you very bitter and sad about what had happened?
No, I wasn't, because in the Adelphi, when I went into the Adelphi first, I thought this was the last, because in the summertime, in the smoke and the atmosphere and everything, I'm going round there and talking to every Tom, Dick and Harry and so on. I said, my goodness, let me out of here up to the green plain fields of Columbus. And I remember a couple of times going up the stairs in the Adelphi and tears in my eyes, wanting the fresh air and the open air. But gradually I got into the life, and then in the Adelphi it was a wonderful opportunity to meet great people. I mean, we had the Beatles there, the Rolling Stones. I became very, very friendly with Cary Grant, and he came over here to Ireland, Dublin, and he spent a week with me. And I remember one time that the two of us were in Wears. He was buying some piece of jewellery for his 6th or 7th wife, and he asked me to go to Wears with him, or would I go someplace. So we went into Wears and Crafton Street, and coming out of Wears, it was a lovely autumn evening, and he looked at me and he says, Harry, I wonder would you do something for me? In my lifetime, I have had interviews with Hitler, with General de Gaulle, with Franco, with Mussolini, with Gandhi, but I have never yet, and I want to dearly, to talk to De Valera. So I said, come on, we'll go back to the Adelphi, and I'll ring up De Valera, and we'll make an appointment.
How had you an entree to De Valera?
Because every time that I went on the stage in the Adelphi to introduce film stars, or to introduce, say, people like Cary Grant or Anna Nagel or any of these people, I always spoke in Irish for about 3 or 4 minutes, because De Valera and his cabinet at the time, Sean Lemass and Sean McEntee, when they went around the country teaching, talking and addressing meetings, De Valera insisted that they introduce their remarks in the Irish language for the start off. So I did this in the Adelphi, and I remember introducing Anna Nagel, and I was on the stage for about 5 minutes talking Irish, and I was getting claps from the audience, completely in Irish. I mean, the standard of Irish then was very high amongst the people, because De Valera had sort of encouraged the use of Irish and this, and so De Valera heard of my being in the Adelphi, and we became great friends, very great friends. I mean, I went up to De Valera when the Adelphi, we were a big cinema at one time. We had 2,304 seats, and at that time it wasn't paying with the advent of television, so we had to split it.
What time are you talking of now?
Oh, in about the 1960s, late 60s. So we divided it up into 3. So I said to Dev, I rang him up, I said, could I come up to see you? I have an important matter to talk to you. He said, certainly. So I arrived up and I spoke to him in Gaelic, and I told him then my mission, that I wanted him to come down and open the new complex in the Adelphi. So I remember him well. He put his hand on my shoulder and he spoke to me in Gaelic, and he said, translation, that Harry, if I did this for you, I would be expected, if every hen house in the country, if it was being opened, they would call on me to do it, and I couldn't refuse them. So what did De Valera do? He sent for Jack Lynch, and he told Jack Lynch to go down and open the Adelphi for Harry Lush.
You mentioned talking Irish to De Valera. Perhaps one of your greatest achievements has been to do with the Irish language. You've continued to teach it up to the present day.
Yes, when I was in the Adelphi, I naturally had a lot of free time. And actually, when I left Columbus College, if I should say this part, when I left Columbus College and I lived in Woodlawn Park in Churchtown, I had given up Irish and all aspects of the Irish language for about 2 years. But people across opposite me, people called Bowden, they were Yorkshire people, and their father worked in Wills in South Circular, Wills Tobacco, South Circular Road. And the Bowdens asked me, said, we have one son, and he has got to get into Trinity. He's got to have a language, and he hasn't got a language. And therefore, if he doesn't know Irish and get into Trinity, we are sunk. We have saved, he's our only child. We have enough money saved to put him through Trinity. Would you take him? So I said, no, I've given up Irish. So the mother came across in 2 days' time, a couple of days afterwards, and the tears started to roll on her face. So I said, yes, look here, Maeve, I'll take him, come on. So I took Colin. He got 5% in his last exam in Irish in summer, and he did the intermediate the following year, and I was in Kerry in September, and he sent me a telegram to Kerry to say that he had got 91%. He went through Trinity, and he did engineering, and now he's an engineer, very famous engineer, well up in Nova Scotia.
One of your other great success stories, of course, is Dr. Garry Bannister, head of Irish here in St. Columba's College. What do you see of the future of the Irish language? You talked about the way in which an audience at the Adelphi could applaud you when you spoke to them. Would they be able to do it today?
I wouldn't think as well. Since the departure of De Valera, there's been no great leader, no great mouthpiece on behalf of the Irish language. I mean, he was our sort of leader at the time, and everybody respected him, and everybody obeyed him, and everybody followed him. And since he is gone, Irish has gone down, but now it is coming back again, very much so. Then there was compulsion in the leaving certificate. You wouldn't get a certificate for the leaving certificate unless you passed
Did you approve of that?
No, I didn't, because I had a lot of pupils that came to me, much more so than now, as a result of this imposition on them that they had to pass it. I was flooded with pupils. I mean, outside my house, I mean, some people said that they'd want a policeman on duty when all the people come in with their cars and so on. But no, it's picking up again now. And
what signs of that do you see?
Well, on television, that they are doing a little more on television. They are bringing Irish into programs a little more, and then they're going to very shortly set up Telefish na Gaeilge, and that will help. That will help immensely, and I'll tell you why I think it will help immensely. Because in this modern world, with television, British television, and so on, everything done practically through the English language, sport, cricket,
yes,
rugby, soccer, and everything. You go away to the Gaeltacht, they have been cut off from all this. Suddenly, they have television in the Gaeltacht. The only television they have is British, is English, and from Dublin here. And they have to know the English language. What's happened? All the young kids now in the Gaeltacht, they can speak in English, and they're very good at English. When I was a young fellow going to Dunquin, Dingle, County Kerry, nobody spoke English. It was all completely Irish. But they can speak English now, and they can speak Irish. And with the advent of television, it will help greatly spreading the language throughout the country. It is said that there is more Irish being spoken nowadays in Ireland than there has been for the last 20 years.
Coming back to the college again, you're up here on this Saturday afternoon, nearly 55 years since you came first. Has it changed a great deal?
No, not a great deal. No, it's still the whole, as it were, the shell of the college. It is still here. It is still very much intact. The fields, the playing fields round it are still the same, except perhaps for the hockey pitch down below. That would be the only major change that I would see in the college.
And do you approve of the fact that we're almost fully co-educational now?
Well, having had experience at Newtown with co-educational, the co-educational system there, and going out, I mean, when I was at Mountjoy, I mean, the Mountjoy people, they did not, the boys there, they did not know how to behave in front of girls, how to speak to girls, how to move in that circle. They didn't. In Newtown, it was no bother. And in Columbus here, originally in Columbus in my time, if you had brought sort of 40 or 50 girls in on top of the school at that time, the boys would have found difficulty in sort of integrating and mingling with the girls. But now I would say that they've none at all, that they're all just one, and they're just one happy family.
And if you could live your life again, would you change anything?
Oh, nothing, absolutely nothing.
That's a good certain way to
Oh no, I mean, I've had a wonderful life. I mean, the people that I have met in the Adelphi, I met John F. Kennedy. I was at a party with him up in De Villiers. De Villiers invited me up. I met Ronald Reagan. He was on the stage of the Adelphi. I met umpteen film stars, famous people. And as I say, I became very friendly with Cary Grant. And he was always asking me out to Hollywood to see him. But I hadn't got the time. I just couldn't. Between my teaching. See, my teaching cuts me down, you see, from going anywhere. I mean, I've got pupils. I take them in September. I get them through their exams in June. And I've got to be there the whole time with them. I can't leave them. So it curtails me.
And what would you say, as a final comment in this interview, to the generation of people who are now pupils at St. Columba's, and indeed young people throughout this country, as a man looking back through your experience in business and in education over 55 years? What's your message to them?
My message to them is to work hard, to keep your head down, like in the second row in the scrum, and shove, 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 and go into university, get a degree, because with the degree in a university and a good degree, that you have a chance of getting a very good job in life. It's the people, the poor people that haven't degrees, that haven't got education, that go out into the world and try to get plum jobs. It's impossible. But if you have a degree, you have so much, a much better chance.
Sound advice. Harry Lush, Garry and Warden Sowby.
Now, how about it? I'll fault your oath.